By 2050, an estimated 800 million people could be at risk from storm surge from extreme weather events. Coastal communities in the least developed countries and small island developing states are likely to be severely impacted, with women and girls especially hard hit. Our ocean and our planet are in peril. This equation is devastatingly simple. Climate risk plus ocean risk equals financial risk. Up to $8.4 trillion could be at risk to global companies in the coming decade if we don't recognize the risk that climate change poses. But this is not a problem for 30 years' time. It is a problem for today. At the Ocean Risk and Resilience Action Alliance, we are focused on driving investment into coastal and marine natural capital, mitigating risk and building resilience in communities adapting to climate change. We are an international alliance connecting finance and insurance, governments and environmental organizations. We're about scaling solutions, accelerating action from top down to bottom up, and from the global south to the north. Through our Ocean Resilience Innovation Challenge, we're also nurturing grassroots solutions. One of the first winners was AFO in Tanzania. It's a community mangrove credit project that aims to establish a local voluntary carbon market to support coastal resilience and biodiversity by preventing further deforestation, encouraging reforestation, and establishing an evergreen mangrove conservation fund. As well as on-the-ground projects, financial solutions are also key. Take the Mesoamerican Reef, a vitally important ecosystem stretching across the coasts of Mexico, Belize, Guatemala and Honduras. In a region where hurricanes put lives and property at risk, it provides critical protection against storm damage. A world-first coral reef insurance policy is based on a parametric concept that pays out a pre-agreed amount to a policyholder according to predefined event characteristics like peak storm wind speed, refined by the MAR Fund and insurance brokers Willis Towers Watson. ORRAA's work with the MAR Fund has been supported by the Canadian government. So there are early adopters in the private sector, but we know that there are more who want to come on board. And that is why we are launching the Back Blue Ocean Finance Commitment. Signing robust net zero commitments, driving financial system policy change, and investing in nature-positive outcomes for the ocean. We are making progress, but we have to move further and faster. We have to move at scale. Whether you're a fisher in the Philippines or a banker on Wall Street, we are calling on you to back blue. We all have a role to play and we're all part of the solution. Investing and building resilience in climate-vulnerable coastal communities at every level, catalyzing, scaling, and accelerating investment. That's why I back blue, and it's why you should back blue as well.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Gonzalo, for kicking things off downstairs. And welcome, everyone, to Glasgow. I'm not Scottish, but I feel very much a host at some of these events, and so I feel it's my job to welcome everyone to this beautiful city, which I learnt last night is one of the most progressive cities in the UK in terms of its net zero plans, its nature climate plans, its zero waste plans. It really is an inspiring place. I had no idea actually until I heard from one of the local politicians last night just how much is being done. So it is wonderful to be here. It's wonderful to have all of you here, and it's absolutely right that we should be kicking off this hugely important Ocean Day with Ocean Risk and Resilience Action Alliance. And we've got some fantastic people around the table. I think most of you, and I know that there are a lot of real heroes here doing extraordinary work. You will know that the ocean has acted as a buffer against climate change ever since we started to change our environment and pump pollution into the atmosphere. And as a result of that, the ocean has been affected. It's taken a battering, and unfortunately it's at the beginning of that process. And even if we all succeed in our ambitions here at COP, it's going to continue, and the ocean will continue to take a battering, and it matters for so many different reasons. A quarter of marine species, hundreds of millions of people depend for everything from food to shelter on, for example, the coral reefs. And we know from the latest IPCC report that coral reefs will not survive 2 degrees. You know, that some will survive 1.5 degrees, not many, but some, better than none. And the stark reality is that we fail to stay within 1.5 degrees. In other words, if our oceans continue to become warmer and more acidic, then we risk pushing the ocean past a point of no return, and that will have impacts on everything we know. I believe someone will correct me, I'm sure. I think it's the case that every second breath we take, we're breathing oxygen that is provided for us by the ocean. But it goes so much further than that. 1 billion people depend on fish as their main source of protein. Around 200 million people depend on fishing, their main source of income, for their livelihoods. So for so many different reasons, this agenda really, really matters and should be absolutely central to our climate ambitions. And we heard at the we had a climate ambition summit last December, which was designed to kind of gear everyone up for what we were expecting to be able to deliver here, or hoping to be able to deliver here at COP. And we heard that 65 million people living in small island developing states are already having to cope with the impacts of climate change and ocean change on a daily basis. And for many of those, it is a struggle, and it's worth, I think, just recognizing the acute difficulties that small island developing states find themselves in now, all on the front line. And ironically, maybe that's the wrong term, but they're first in line when it comes to the impacts of climate change, but they also, on the whole, or at least many of them, have got the most ambition when it comes to tackling climate change. So I think that when small island developing states speak, they speak with a real moral authority, and it's the right that the world should listen. So I'm going to speak I'm going to wrap up in a second, but I just want to just put where we are in context, because we've had some really big commitments over the last few days. And the biggest thing that's happened, I think, is that nature broadly has gone from the very margins of the climate debate to the very heart of the climate debate. I don't think anyone now at this COP is disputing the absolute critical importance of nature in tackling climate change. There is a general recognition now. In fact, every event I've been to, the speakers have said, one after the other, you cannot stay within 1.5 degrees. You can't get to net zero credibly without nature. And that is a monumental shift, and that's backed up with unprecedented finance commitments from governments, unprecedented philanthropic commitments, but even more important than all of that, unprecedented commitments from the private sector, from financial institutions, from the multilateral development banks, from the big buyers of commodities. I know we're talking about oceans, but that's the main cause of deforestation, that they're going to align their business models with nature. And it's enough, not all of them clearly, but it's enough that it is becoming something of a critical mass. And I know later, maybe not this event, next event, Tanya is going to give us some even better news to add to what I've just said, because WWF have been really working incredibly hard with the private sector as well. So we, one part of what we've been trying to do in the UK, I guess as part of our COP presidency, is figuring out how to get more support to those small island developing states. And we've been working very closely with Fiji on the task force for access to finance. There is actually quite a lot of money out there, but it's very, very hard to get hold of. It can take 5 years sometimes from the first application until the money arrives. The hoops and loops and obstacles they have to get through are a nightmare. So we are working very hard to improve access to finance, and on the back of the initial response or work of the task force, we've committed £100 million to respond to the recommendations of that task force, and we're proud to be co-chairing that with Fiji. But we know we also have to enable countries, particularly small island developing states, but climate vulnerable countries generally, to be ready for the changes that are now inevitable. We know adaptation and resilience is absolutely key, and that's where, again, as with so many things, nature-based solutions come in. Nature-based solutions can provide up to a third of the most cost-effective solutions to climate change, as well as helping species recover and, crucially, helping coastal communities to be more resilient. And I had the fortune of being in Colombia recently, and you will know that there were some terrible storms there around 18 months ago. But you can see absolutely crystal clear that those communities that were living on coastlines where mangroves were either there or had been restored, and likewise coral reefs, where there are healthy coral reefs that were either there or have been restored, and they have an extraordinary restoration program, those communities were protected. And those communities where the mangroves had been taken away were not protected, and the damage was catastrophic to people's lives and to everything they have invested in and owned. So nature-based solutions are just so important, and we've been told, I don't know who's done the maths, that when you invest in nature-based solutions, the payback is 60 times. So it really does make sense, and that's why we put nature absolutely at the heart of our approach to climate change. And when we hosted the G7 Climate Environment Ministers in the summer, all of the G7 committed to supporting, all of them did, didn't they? All of the G7 committed to supporting ORRAA to achieve its aim of getting £500 million of investment into coastal and marine nature-based solutions by 2030. But we need to go further than that. We need everyone on board. We need business. We need civil society. We need absolute buy-in across the board, because we know what's possible. Everything that needs to be done is being done somewhere. It's just not being done at scale. And actually, I'm going to shortly be introducing, or maybe thanking Maya here, who's going to be telling us why that matters. But we absolutely need to scale up fast. We need increased pressure. We need to make sure that every promise that's been made over the last few days is honored, and we need to go even further. I feel like we're pointing in the right direction now for the first time that I can think of, but we've got to get going really fast. So I'm going to stop, and I'm really, really happy to be able to introduce, I thought you'd already been introduced, but I'm going to introduce Ulrich de Coen from AXA. They have done so much to support ORRAA, and they've actually created, I would say, co-created ORRAA, and ORRAA is just a fantastically important initiative, and it's grown into something really significant, and that's very much down to the leadership, among others, of Ulrich.
Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you, everyone, for being here this morning. Thank you to Defra and to ORRAA for organizing this really great roundtable. I'm very happy to be here. I'm French, so I beg your pardon for my English, which will not always be as great as yours, of course. And so just to put into perspective what we are talking about, which the Minister highlighted very eloquently, I just wanted to point at the bottles you have in front of you on the tables, which are actual meltwater from the Arctic. And let me just give you, and you can drink it, it's safe. Let me just give you one very, very significant figure. 17 million of these bottles are lost into the ocean every second. So this is what we're talking about. This is the pace. So this is just to frame things. Clearly, I couldn't agree more. This COP needs to be about not only setting ambitions, but putting the facts, the action plans behind our goals. And when you see what has been achieved at the beginning of this week on forests, you can see it very positively and say, as yes, nature is at the core of the conversation, and we should be able to achieve within hopefully a short time frame a similar commitment on oceans. We should not forget, though, that it has taken 26 COPs to get there for forests, and clearly we cannot afford having to wait the same time. COP is the very proof that we all have a role in this, be it the private sector, governments, civil society. Nobody can tackle this on their own. And if I take AXA's climate journey, which started actually 6 years ago at COP21, when we were the first large institutional investor to announce we would be exiting coal, both as investors and underwriters. We have always worked in coalitions. We have always, every step we have been able to take has been thanks to our collaboration with our peers, with governments, with regulators, and we've always been very active in several coalitions. We are part of the Net Zero Asset Owner Alliance, chairing the Net Zero Insurance Alliance, which is, carries very ambitious goals, right? We were a founding member of TCFD, and now very happy to see TNFD, which we are also a member of, really building momentum. And we are also very proud of the work we do with you, Ekoshui, in the Insurance Development Forum. You might have seen that we have announced in the past couple of weeks new measures, new policies to help fight deforestation. So on our underwriting guidelines, on our investment guidelines, we are going to exit those companies and sectors that are harming the most the deforestation. On oil and gas as well. We are pulling back from some sorts of unconventional oil and new oil exploration. But each of these steps has only been possible for the work with the climate and nature community. Our work on ocean is at the core of our commitments on climate and biodiversity, and thanks to the teams and people like Chip, we have been in this space for a long time, focusing on ocean science to really get a better understanding of the risks, but also opportunities that ocean can bring to this fight. More recently, we've been launching the AXA XL Ocean Risk Initiative, which looks to develop insurance-led solutions to risks that are caused by the changes ocean is undergoing, with a focus on nature-built solutions and resilience. We're very proud of this work, and since I still have the mic for a couple of seconds, I'm going to just mention three of the most recent commitments that we are very proud to implement through both AXA XL, but also our research fund, the AXA Research Fund, which has been very active in this area. We're going to be supporting two major projects, which are part of the UN Decade for Ocean Science and Sustainable Development. AXA Research Fund has committed €1 million to support 8 transformative postdoctoral research projects in the area of coastal livelihood preservation. And AXA XL has worked over the past year with the IOC UNESCO to develop a toolkit for governments to help increase ocean literacy across the world. And I really think that's a really fundamental work, and it will be launched in January with a fully tailor-made training program. I'm also pleased, and that's the last mention I want to make, AXA is now a signatory and member of the Sustainable Blue Economy Finance Principles and the Black Blue Ocean Finance Commitment, which we'll hear about a little later from you, John. This COP, we said it, COP21 was about setting the ambition. This COP really needs to be, and a lot of people have said it, about clear action plans, and for a very simple reason, because we have a strong responsibility for the next generation. And they will inherit whatever we decide to do, so they need to have a voice today. And this is why I'm really pleased to introduce Maya Delaney, youth representative from the Bahamas. Maya, we're going to listen to you and your message for this table. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, especially to speak to you in person. I know the last time many of these global events took place in person would have been 2019. And that year, I attended New York Climate Week, which was quite pivotal for me. It was pivotal because just days before, Hurricane Dorian, among the strongest and most destructive hurricanes on record in the Atlantic, devastated 2 northern islands in my home country, the Bahamas. And as a country of 390,000 people, every single Bahamian knew someone who lost a loved one, their home, or their business. And this story is echoed throughout my region, with the 2017 impact of Hurricane Maria on Puerto Rico and on Dominica, or the impact of Hurricane Irma on Barbuda. The list goes on. The climate change catastrophe is already occurring. In the Caribbean, we are already losing lives, livelihoods, and our natural environment, crucial to the fabric of our culture. So when I sat in on those Climate Week meetings days later, I was stunned by the number of hollow and performative pledges by public and private sector alike. And I was stunned to see the dearth of discussion around ocean-based solutions. I'm optimistic, however, that this time will be different. This time must be different. In the earlier video clip and even in the remarks so far, you've heard the risks. I would like to talk about the opportunity because this is a massive moment. This is the first time that the ocean has truly risen to the top of global discussions around climate, and it should, because there is no healthy planet without a healthy ocean. And the ocean provides a catalog of immediately actionable, complementary solutions to get us to that healthy planet. Sustainable maritime transport, ocean-based renewable energy, refinement of sustainable aquaculture and fisheries. Together, this could get us up to a third of the way to that 1.5 degree future. And to the private sector stakeholders around the table, you have an integral role to play, and it's an exciting one. My interest in your role is exactly why I'm completing an MBA focused on finance. We need investment in emerging and growth markets that are dependent on healthy and resilient oceans and coasts. And thankfully, the investment opportunity and the innovation are off the charts. The sustainable ocean economy is set to double in size by 2030, and the countries poised to become ocean economy superstars across Latin America and the Caribbean, East Africa, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific, they are emerging markets, where GDP is growing nearly 60% faster than that across developed markets. And on innovation, we are past the proof of concept phase. We're now replicating projects. Opportunity abounds. So what's left? We need to scale. We need to get from tens of millions of dollars a year to at least billions of dollars a year. And those are my expectations of you. It is high time that commitments become substantive, actionable, and immediate, especially immediate, because as time runs away from us, so does the opportunity to thoughtfully and thoroughly act. And so upon conclusion of these meetings, I implore you to do more. Do not let it fade until this time next year, because in the meantime, I dread the likelihood that yet another record-breaking storm might literally level another community in my home country. I look forward to the measured progress that you will report at COP27. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Maya, for those incredibly powerful words, which I think encapsulate perfectly why we're here, not just at this event, but why we're here in Glasgow and why what we do here matters so much and why those words can't afford to be empty. So thank you so much. And actually, I'll make, if I can, I've just got a note saying everyone has to be quicker because we're late. So I'm going to pretend I haven't read it for just 1 second and say that we are I'm a politician. I got involved because of the environment, but so I don't particularly need lobbying to take these issues seriously. But I can tell you that it's pressure from people, from civil society, and from front-running businesses, the progressive ones. That is the pressure which moves the political system. And without that pressure, it just doesn't move. Tanya knows that well, having devoted herself to trying to move that system. I have devoted myself, including from the inside, to moving that system, but it's pressure that gets us to where we need to be. And the message that you just delivered, that is part of that pressure, and I hope we can find a way of bottling what you just said and making everyone have a sip, because I think it'll make a big, big difference. You're absolutely brilliant. I'm now going to look at the note, which tells us we have to be very brief. And I'm going to hand over to a great hero, Peter Thompson, the ambassador, the UN Secretary General's Special Envoy for the Ocean, who has been an absolute champion and a pleasure to know and to work with. And I really look forward to hearing what you have to say. Peter.
There we go. Sorry, I'm just wearing my branding. I'll take it off now. Conserve and sustainably use the ocean's resources. SDG 14, and we've all agreed to this, by the way. All of you have signed up to it back in when we started the SDGs. 4 quick points Lord Goldsmith has dictated. Firstly, you're wondering what this is. It was sitting on my seat when I came in here. I sailed this thing from Barcelona to Marseille. It's the symbol of connectivity between biodiversity loss, between the decline of the ocean's health, between climate change, etc. All the great global conferences are seeing this, and there's messages inside this battle from the presidents of all these conferences, just to show that there are no silos. We're all connected on this, so I'm just going to pass it around. Feel it. Feel your connectivity with everything. 3 quick points. COP26, conversation with Al Gore. This is a different COP from any that he's been to, and he's been to every one of them. The old arguments that we used to have, that's all gone. Everybody's convinced now. Now, for the first time, everybody is here to talk about solutions and what we're going to do to fix it. And Lord Goldsmith has mentioned the fact that the whole attitude towards nature-based solutions has changed as well. We don't have to win that argument anymore. So what am I doing here other than representing my grandchildren? I'm here to try and push the climate finance needle in the direction of sustainable blue economy. Why? That is the future of humanity, the sustainable blue economy, be it energy, be it medicine, be it nutrition. That's where our children are going to get their security from. You've heard the mantra? Okay, that was all the good news. Now prophet of doom returns. The no healthy planet without a healthy ocean. And the ocean is measurably in decline, the health of the ocean. And the indices are clear. I won't go into them now, I don't have time. So we're in a very dangerous space still, in spite of the fact that we've now all got it. We all understand we're in a dangerous space and we're doing something about it, but we are still in that dangerous place. And there's no better indicator of that than the decline of the ocean's health. So this ORRAA initiative, obviously, very important part of the battle against that, to try and set things right. When we were downstairs, and this is my last point, there was a backdrop of some mangrove forest and a beach and things. It reminded me very much of the district where I'm from in Fiji, and when I finished university in 1972, I took up the job of district officer, which is like a rural development officer. And I was about 6 months into the job when a monster hurricane came through. Actually not as powerful as the one that went to the northern Bahamas, but enough to knock out every bit of infrastructure we had. Second biggest river in Fiji, the bridge went down, we were just cut off from the outside world for about a year. But my point being that nobody in my district, other than a couple of merchants in our small town, had insurance. Nobody did. And villages were flattened, all the fishing boats were wrecked, etc. And I wager that today that's still the situation. Why is that? Poor people around the world, they don't even think about insurance or buying an insurance policy. You just waste your time if you went down their village and tried to persuade them to buy policies for insurance. So in looking at this, I guess my challenge to you all, because you sit in places like the City of London, my challenge to you all is whatever you're setting up here, make sure it's getting down to that lady who, with a starving kid in a coastal community somewhere, who's being asked to give up her sustenance to make a marine protected area or whatever, make sure that whatever you're doing, it's going to get down to her. There's not just a whole bunch of reports being published and all the rest, that there actually will be a change in her life. Because there are ways to do that, You can fund seaweed projects and you can insure those if somebody else will pay the premium, because she's not going to be able to do it. So that's my challenge to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Maya. Thank you, Ambassador. That's very, very good challenge to move to the session that I'm happy to introduce, which is what can the public and private sectors do in practice to drive innovation and blue finance and deliver ocean resilience? You said it, a failing ocean generates multiple risks for coastal communities, for whole economic sectors which rely on healthy oceans. They also drive risks for financial assets, and we're all seeing, and I guess we're all convinced here, that failing oceans may drive tomorrow's stranded assets. So as investors, as insurers, we have good reasons to pay attention to this. And one of the most important roles we probably have to play is help make the economic rationale to invest in the ocean. And so I'm really happy to introduce Ekostuehi Iyahen, Secretary General of the Insurance Development Forum, to share her view about this issue.
Okay, thank you so much for the kind introduction, and it's really great to be here to see where we have come in this journey. So perhaps I'll start by just connecting it to the broader negotiations and the reality that's also taking place there, which is that the reality is that we are not going to meet the pledge of 100 billion a year to help developing countries to transition to green economies and adapt to climate change. That's the reality, the sobering reality. The ocean, one of the planet's greatest assets, at the same time is in crisis. Heating leading to extreme weather events, sea level rise, and adverse and significant ecosystems changes, as well as pollution, overfishing, rising levels of acidity, and biodiversity loss all jeopardize the health of the ocean. This has put food security and economic and social resilience of more than 3 billion people at risk. So as was said earlier, their lives and livelihoods at risk. Small islands, developing states, and coastal least developing countries are on the fourth line of climate change and are in particular peril. We've heard from the Bahamas of that experience. And I would also like to say and acknowledge Honorable Minister Cadell, who is from the island of Barbados, and who has been at the forefront of this conversation, both in the context of the negotiations, but also the challenges in mobilizing finance for adaptation. Right? So there is a reality, a material reality to that experience. So marine and coastal ecosystems, including mangroves, sea grasses, and salt marshes, are proven efficient and cost-effective resilience builders and biodiversity reservoirs, as well as carbon sinks, often much more so than human-designed counterparts. Yet, they are often destroyed either with intent or as a byproduct in the search for short-term and often unsustainable material gain. The United Nations estimates that investing just $6 billion a year in nature-based disaster risk management measures like restoring coastal ecosystems would save the world $360 billion over the next 15 years. So there's an economic rationale. US $300 billion has been paid out by insurers over the past 10 years for coastal storm surge damage, with significantly greater costs borne by governments and taxpayers. So this is also related to the point that was shared earlier, which is the insurance industry can pay out, but when you think about the total losses, a significant portion is still very much borne by governments and taxpayers. And so there is an issue there that we need to address. US $163 billion of assets are estimated to be underinsured today, with emerging economies accounting for 96% of the global insurance protection gap. And I reference the fact that what that means in many developing countries is that you're looking at 1 to 3% in terms of insurance penetration rates. For most developed economies, you're talking about 40, 50, 60% in terms of insurance. So when you have a storm, it is individuals that are absorbing that shock, right? And with climate change, that's becoming relentless. So both SIDS and LDCs are highly exposed to the impacts of climate change, such as sea level rise, ocean heating. Yet, they're also populations that have the least levels of adaptive capacity. Supporting the development of robust, sustainable, equitable, and diverse blue economy is essential. Critically, it will also create true economic potential for many economies, especially in SIDS and LDCs, empowering local communities which depend on the ocean for their lives and livelihoods, and enabling them to create their own sustainable futures must be part of the conversation. Asset owners and managers need to recognize the level of financial risk in ocean-related investments. They must integrate nature risk into mainstream risk assessments, seek and pilot risk-based and science-led approaches to guide action towards sustainable pathways, engage companies on their vulnerabilities to such risk, and encourage transparency and public reporting so that nature risks can be better managed. So the institution that I sit in, we call it the Insurance Development Forum, but it is about the architecture of risk management. It's about bringing transparency to risk. It's about offering products that can help us to absorb those shocks. But it's also about investments, right? Because insurers, and I see John, are also institutional investors. So how do we drive that capital where it needs to go and in a positive way? So nature-based solutions, resilience, and finance are key COP26 themes. A clear opportunity to break down barriers and create long-term value to protect the ocean and coastal communities which depend on it. For a coastal community to be empowered and enabled to develop and strengthen their adaptive capacity and be resilient in all senses of the word, locally led projects must be at the heart of development. So it's not a top-down approach. It is a co-development with countries. It is a co-development with communities. ORRAA supports exactly that. It's the kind of work that you do from mangroves, this kind of work, from the mangroves-based voluntary community carbon credit of aqua farm organizations in Tanzania to strengthening the financial resilience of small-scale farmers in Philippines. And this is why, as the IDF, we are so happy to formally become an institutional partner of ORRAA. But this is also very personal for me, right? Because I'm also someone from a small island developing states, Barbados, and I also have Nigerian heritage. I'm also Nigerian, and there's a huge coast in Nigeria. So the oceans are important. So being here today is really a great thing. I think we have a tremendous opportunity with COP26. The negotiations might be going a certain way, but there's a lot that we can do as a community. So certainly a pleasure, and congratulations to you, Chip, Karen, and Nat, for all the work that you are doing.
Thank you so much, Ekoswehi, for these inspiring words. In May 2019, the environment ministers of the G7 gave their backing to ORRAA, but there was one country who showed really amazing leadership, and this is Canada, by becoming the first country being a full member and sitting on the steering committee. And in November 2019, Canada provided 2.5 million Canadian dollars to help fund ORRAA's development and first projects. These have helped to bring to life one product which we are also at AXA involved in, and including projects in the Pacific, in the Caribbean, as well as research on ocean risk with particular focus on SIDS and LDCs and women and girls. And I'm therefore really delighted to be able to introduce my other French-speaking fellow here at the table, the Honourable new Canadian Minister of Environment and Climate Change, Stephen Guilbeault. Thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. Zach, I have this really long speech that the department prepared for me, which unfortunately for my colleagues who work late on it, I won't be reading. Maya, thank you for your presentation. It's my 9th day on the job as a Minister of Environment and Climate Change, but it's my 19th COP. And my first COP was the first COP, and Salim, I believe you and I were there together. I was there as a young activist, and we were working to put more pressure on governments, even then, and even though few people believed that climate change was even a reality. I worked for Greenpeace for 10 years. I might have been arrested a few times for my environmental activism, might even gone to jail, and yet I'm an environment and climate change minister of a G7 country. Why? Because Canadians have made this a priority. Canadians have sent a very clear signal over the last 2 elections where climate was the #1 issue, where one of the most debated element of the campaign was climate pricing, and we've won 2 consecutive elections on that. And if in 1995 people would have told me that 25 years later we would be sitting together with investors, insurers, people from the private sector, government ministers, I would not have believed it. And in many ways we've made a lot of progress, but unfortunately the atmosphere, the oceans and vulnerable people aren't seeing those progress yet. So we need to do more, and we need to do this faster. We've made significant progress. The fact that we now have a delivery plan for the $100 billion. We were in Copenhagen, this catastrophic conference, where perhaps the only redeeming virtue of Copenhagen was this commitment by industrialized nations to the developing world that we were going to provide that support. We got there a bit late, but we're getting there. But we know that billions is not enough, and we need the private sector. We need insurers to rise up to the challenge, and it is our role as government to ensure that this happens and to do everything we can to make this happen. Maya, we need you to keep Zach and my feet and other politicians around the table's feet to the fire. We need your energy. We need you to continue pushing us to do better, because we need to do that. On top of the initial grand contribution that Canada made to ORRAA. The Prime Minister, who was here earlier this week, announced another $9 million to ORRAA to continue supporting the excellent work that you are doing for oceans, and I'm very happy to be here on behalf of the Prime Minister and on behalf of Canada. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister, for this and this new amazing commitment. I'd now like to invite reflections and comments from another group of speakers representing private sector and civil society to focus on those innovative solutions that we're looking for to deliver coastal resilience. We're going to start with John Haley, CEO of Willis Towers Watson, and afterwards Tanya Steele, the Chief Executive of the WWF UK, and Woo Chung Asian Development Bank's Managing Director General. We start with you, John.
Thanks to Lord Goldsmith and the UK government and ORRAA and Ulrich and the AXA team for the invitation to this roundtable, and indeed for your sustained leadership on ocean risk and finance over many years, passion which I think we all share. I remember back at the World Ocean Summit in 2018, we launched our Global Ecosystem Resilience Facility. And I think about how far things have come in that time, much of it in collaboration with AXA. And so we're proud of some of the progress we've made, recognizing, as Maya said, that has to be doubled and redoubled going forward. At the ministerial round on Finance Day, I mentioned Adam Smith, and the Scottish philosopher who, with The Wealth of Nations, laid the foundation for modern economics and sort of described the invisible hand that shapes our lives. And I think it's important to understand, to confront the climate emergency, what we need to do is to redirect the invisible hand. We need to be guiding finance toward a resilient and a prosperous future on both land and sea. And I say redirect because I think what we want to do is we want to harness the right kind of incentives in the private sector, and we want to direct market forces to addressing the climate emergency. That's probably the most powerful thing we can do. One of the things that, as I think about insurance and what happens as institutions increasingly disclose some climate-related risks, what happens is the dependencies on natural assets actually become illuminated. And so the disclosure of ocean risk helps identify whatever economic dependencies we have. And this higher level of understanding, let's take coral reefs, for example, that can be a game changer. And it's ironic, but actually I think in a world of climate disclosure, maybe the most significant impact of natural asset values is through the liability side of the corporate balance sheet, including firms that operate far from the coast. The great thing about getting insurance in here is, first of all, you don't have to own an asset to have an insurable interest. That's what we did with the coral reefs. We found institutions and owners that were far from it that had economic interest in it that we could harness to protect and preserve them and rehabilitate them. And in order to reduce premiums, you need to take steps to lower risk. And really, that's what it's all about. It's about avoiding risk rather than learning to live with it. So in the coral reef example, if the health of the reef impacts industries such as fishing or tourism, then in order to reduce the risk of the coral reef degradation, companies are motivated to work to prevent that. And what we get is environmental stewardship, which is one of the things we want. We're working to put these attributes to use around the world with both public and private partners. So in Fiji and in Papua New Guinea, we're working with the WWF to increase the adaptation capacity and resilience of coastal fishing communities with funding from the Global Environmental Facility. In the Philippines, we're working with the Conservation International and with RARE on innovations, bringing insurance tools and solutions to bear on some key risk management and conservation problems. And then earlier this year, we implemented the multinational insurance of the Mesoamerican Reef off Central America with the Mesoamerican Reef Fund, and that was supported by Insure Resilience Solutions Fund. We're really pleased that this program is going to be extended in the Caribbean with the support of the UK government's Blue Planet Fund through ORRAA. Developed economies also need ocean and coastal risk protection too. We've worked with the Nature Conservancy to test various approaches to ensuring reefs in Hawaii and Florida against not only hurricanes, but also coral bleaching and sedimentation after some extreme rainfall events. And in this, we built on some ideas that we developed during the Pacific Ocean Finance Program with many partners across the global south. So now we're ready to mobilize public-private partnerships at scale. And I think that's one of the messages for COP26, is that some of this is now going to be done at scale. COP26, the Back Blue Initiative, UK's Blue Planet Fund are providing some powerful momentum. And what we're particularly excited about is this Sea Change Impact Financing Facility, the SCIF. That's the strategic platform that we've been looking to really scale up thing. I'm delighted to announce today we intend to deepen our partnership and commitment to ORRAA and play a leading role in the development and implementation of SCIF. We're going to work with ORRAA and other partners to focus on building out these insurance-related dimensions of the SCIF, but we're not going to stop there. Our approach to thinking about risk and resilience applies across financial institutions. Our insurance-led thinking really on ocean risk analytics is something that formed the basis of our work in the Coalition for Climate Resilient Investment, which steers the economics of infrastructure. And so let me just close by saying, with all this, I think we can redirect the invisible hand, we can steward the oceans, we can protect our lives and livelihoods, and we can deliver part of a new economic order which is going to protect the wealth of nations for years and decades ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now hand over to Tanya. Is it? No, yeah, I think. Tanya,
yes,
yeah.
Lovely, thank you.
If I can just ask all the speakers to be crisp in their remarks because we're running a bit late.
I'll go in double quick time. First of all, really delighted to be joined by so many in this really important discussion today, particularly in terms of the focus of building both resilience of the ocean, but actually the coastal communities who really are dependent on it. There's no doubt that finally the dial is starting to shift in terms of the acknowledgement of the ocean as a huge contributor to the global economy and fundamentally at the heart of tackling climate change. But the reality is, how do we get practical on this? What are the real steps and how do we move beyond the many promises? From a WWF point of view, we're certainly working to influence all parts of the ocean economy with a real focus on the redirection of public and private mainstream finance towards the most sustainable development pathways. We were really proud to co-develop the Sustainable Blue Economy Finance Principles in partnership with many others, and are very much focusing now on working with the United Nations Environment Programme Finance Initiative to really get some granular guidance for the finance sector. And we feel that's a really critical part of the blue finance ecosystem. We know, though, that the importance of building the case for change in the finance sector is critical. And recently we launched the Global Value at Risk in the Blue Economy report in collaboration with both Metabolic and also with ORRAA. And I won't repeat the many statistics in terms of the case. We know that the case is there. It is now irrefutable. But unquestionably, by investing in the recovery of our oceans ecosystems and its biodiversity, we know we will start to manage and steward such precious resources better. We know we depend on it in terms of our ability to really steward climate change, but actually the health of those oceans is critical. So we know we need to drive more investment, certainly in terms of strengthening mitigation, adaptation, and the resilience potential of marine and coastal ecosystems moving forward. And we're really keen to look at how we start to amplify and accelerate the uptake of locally led solutions. We've been undertaking some very preliminary work in both the Southwest Indian Ocean, the Mediterranean, and the Coral Triangle to identify some portfolios of investable projects across, again, a whole range of communities, and looking for regional incubators as well as accelerators to start to accelerate this moving forward as well. I think there's a much bigger and a broader public debate that needs to be had too. On the way walking down to this breakfast this morning, I was passed by a tuk-tuk, and you know, one of those lovely cycling ones, and on the back was a lovely little advert, and again, it's this statistic many of us know well, and it had a picture of a whale, And it said in its lifetime, this whale will absorb as much carbon as 1,000 trees. How do we move this conversation into blue carbon and indeed blue trees in our ocean in terms of the investment and the support of this excellent ORRAA platform and indeed the finance facilities that we know need to sit behind it? But I guess really just one point I wanted to close on, and I think this is to echo the comments made by Maya this morning as well. Every climate and ocean promise we make needs to be kept. This is the time for action, and there is an incredible skill set, network, opportunity, resources around this table, and I do hope that we can almost recommit to those many promises way beyond this conference and in the weeks and days ahead. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Hello? 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 Yeah, yes. Thank you very much for inviting the Asian Development Bank to be part of this very, very important partnership. And we have so many different partners around the table, so I need to first explain why we are here. ADB was first established 50 years ago to reduce poverty. But a couple of years ago, we realized, we got to move on and look for prosperity, right? But you can't just do that. Some people prosper and others not. So we did come up with prosperity, but in a sustainable way, inclusive way, and with resilience. So I'm very happy to be sitting here in the Resilience Hub to discuss this. So like other speakers, I'm not going to repeat a lot of the statistics and the reason why we're here, and I think we all get it. And so how do we work together and put more money into this program? And this is what I'm going to focus on. Yeah, so in realizing this, 2 years ago we launched the Healthy Ocean and Blue Economies Initiative in Fiji. Our intention is to provide $5 billion over the 5-year period. And the pandemic is slowing us down a little bit, but I think we'll get there. But more importantly, 2 weeks ago we announced a big program of $100 billion for all of the climate change actions, of which we're expecting about 34% of that to be going to adaptation and resilience. So we need to figure out how to, you have to all help us in how to use that money. So another point about our strategy 2030 is that the issue is huge. So we can't handle this ourselves. So we do need to crowd in knowledge from everyone. And then because it's so complex, some of our developing countries could be confused, right? So we do need to provide the right kind of information and knowledge to the right places in the right countries. So that's where we come in. And when you listen to the insurance industry, it's very interesting, but personally I don't get 100%. So we need to get experts to come in and digest it and provide to the developing countries so that they can design a program that's effective and be resilient at the end of the day. Just a couple of specific issues that I wanted to highlight. We have been issuing bonds, and we had a very successful experience with issuing green bonds worth about $9.6 billion since 2007. Modeling that, we recently launched a blue bond, which was worth $300 million, which will be purchased by institutional investors from Japan, and will cover a range of activities and ocean-related projects in Asia and the Pacific region. That's quite wide, and we're also developing blue bond incubator, so that we can increase issuance of such bonds by ADB, sovereign, as well as corporate entities. We're also setting up a hub, healthy ocean finance hub, which will be based in Jakarta, and that's moving on quite well. But we also wanted to replicate that in the Pacific region. So with that, we are providing the groundwork through the ocean governance study, scoping of new parametric insurance product to enhance coral reef restoration, and providing technical assistance to support solutions, the nature-based solutions, and collaborate among the atoll nations as well. So all in all, at the end of the day, we want to provide Asian development knowledge bank. So we need to provide money at the end of the day. So we need your help to spend that money. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to all the three of you. I'd now like to invite Baroness Scotland, Secretary General of the Commonwealth, followed by Rebecca Moore of Google, to make an announcement.
Well, firstly, can can I just say what a privilege and a pleasure it is to sit at a breakfast with so many climate warriors. Because, as many of you all know, the Commonwealth is made up of 54 countries, representing about 2.6 billion people. But 32 of them are small states, 25 of them are small island states, and 14 are the least developed. So we are the perfect petri dish. And round this table, I was just taking my members off, because if you want to know who we are UK, Barbados, Dominica, Canada, Maldives, Fiji, Bangladesh, and I think we've probably got India here somewhere around the table as well. And it is absolutely critical that we now deliver on what we've promised. I think Mia said it so powerfully. This isn't about figures, this is about lives and livelihoods. People are dying on the front line. And that 1.5 to stay alive isn't a slogan, it's a reality, and we have an opportunity to make it. But I was hoping that someone would just outline how bad our position on funding is, because I hope everyone realizes only 2% of the Green Climate Fund has been allocated to ocean-related projects. Only 1.6 of the global ODA has gone to support the ocean economy. And for SDG 14, it is the least funded of all SDGs. 0.01% of all SDG funding from development finance goes to SDG 14. And we around this table have to make that history. And only 0.56% of SDG funding comes from philanthropy. So all of those of you around this table who are burdened with money and don't know where to put it, trust me, I can help you. But we have a huge opportunity here, because I think the other thing we have to understand, and I'm a lawyer, okay? So I am telling you, we are jointly and severally charged on an indictment to deliver this 1.5 to enable our member states to stay alive. And I intend to do everything I can to make sure we fill this gap, this financial gap, to enable our member states to deliver that which they must, because I intend, when we are charged, to plead not guilty. And I hope all of you will be there on the indictment with me to say, we didn't do this, we were the solution and not the problem. So the two announcements that we want to make is the Secretariat is really proud to become an institutional member of ORRAA, which will open the door to the Blue Charter action groups to form strategies, skills, and partnerships to unlock the private investment and blended finance options from cross-government projects. And we're also going to be one of the delivery partners with the Simpson Centre, who are also pleased to commence a new project funded by ORRAA through the UK government's Blue Planet Fund, titled Identifying Climate Smart Solutions for Commonwealth SIDS and Coastal Cities. And I just want to emphasize that we are 32 of the 42 small states in the world. So anything that you do with our members can be replicable with all the others. So this is a real petri dish that we have to test out what we need to do for the rich ones, the poor ones, the squeezed middle, the small island states, the landlocked states. And we can actually do this if we choose. And I'm extremely proud that everyone around this table is choosing, and I am asking each of you to take a set of tack pins, put them on the chair so that no one else can sit down until this gets delivered, because we have to do this. So thank you so much indeed.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Rebecca Moore, and now we're getting into the nerd part of the breakfast. I lead Google's geospatial and mapping initiatives that are focused on addressing environmental and humanitarian challenges. We lovingly call ourselves Maps for Good, and we do this primarily by developing innovative technology and putting it in the hands of amazing organizations around the world to drive impact at global scale. Some of you may have heard of Global Forest Watch, which we founded almost a decade ago with World Resources Institute. And in the ocean space, 5 years ago, we were a founding partner of Global Fishing Watch. I'm just curious how many of you have anybody heard of Global Fishing Watch? Okay, great. So Global Fishing Watch is now an independent nonprofit. It aims to bring greater transparency and sustainability to the world's industrial fishing fleets. We continue to serve on the board, but primarily our role is to make in-kind technology available, cloud computing, geospatial processing, AI, to enable their mission at the scale, the global scale they operate at. So over the 5 years since they launched, Global Fishing Watch has collaborated closely with leading academic institutions to publish more than 40 really seminal publications. 10 governments have publicly signed on to publishing their vessel tracks for increased transparency, and 7 new marine protected areas have been created, powered by evidence-based database decision process using Global Fishing Watch data. So we at Google, we're always looking for those leverage points where all of the pieces are there, except that maybe there's a critical gap in information that if that could just be filled, it would unlock that causal chain to that positive impact. And in this case, by processing billions of satellite vessel tracks through AI, Global Fishing Watch is placing timely, relevant, and actionable information in the hands of academics, nonprofits, UN agencies, Coast Guards, and government programs. And today, we'll now begin the first engagements with the private sector and with market initiatives. And this is, we think, a huge lever for ocean sustainability. So because they're too humble to announce this themselves, we are happy to announce on behalf of the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, who's been a close partner with us over the years in these initiatives, a new commitment for $2 million to ORRAA and its project partners, Global Fishing Watch and TrigMat Tracking. Yeah. Eileen, please raise your hand. Eileen leads the group that is doing this. This grant will enable the creation of new tools for insurance companies to combine vessel histories and characteristics, port visits, transshipments at sea, which is a big issue, and government and international block lists into low, medium, and high risk scores for vessels. And these insurance underwriters can help guard against insuring fishing vessels or fishing support vessels that may be engaged in illegal fishing. This is important. I think many of you know that illegal, unregulated, and unreported fishing is a major ocean risk multiplier, and it's particularly impacting the food security of coastal communities in developing countries, in small island states, or did I hear it's big ocean states is the way we talk about it now, and international waters of the high seas. So our hope and our belief is that the increased transparency of vessel actions enabled through technology in these partnerships in the hands of local actors, conservationists, now along with further engagement from the insurance and other private sector players, will and really must lead to more sustainable and abundant ocean for now and decades to come. Thank you.
Sorry, I've got a huge pile of notes here. I'm just see where we are in our session. Thank you. I think I now know. Thank you so much. And Rebecca, nerdish attention to detail matters, because actually, if we don't know what we're doing, then we don't know it's being done. And that applies as much for ocean as it does for land. And before I go into the kind of the heart of this, I just want to clock that guy over there, Gustavo, because he is a very, very, I don't know whether you're speaking, Gustavo, but Gustavo has announced, or Ecuador has announced under his watch, one of the most exciting ocean initiatives that has been announced actually since we've been here at COP, and that is the creation of a 600,000 square kilometer marine park, marine protected area with Colombia, with Costa Rica, with Panama, and it's just amazing. So I want to just take my hat off to him.
Swap of 1.1 billion.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
just to add that the president announced that among this announcement of the marine reserve at Galapagos, we will do the biggest depth swap in the history for conservation. We will do a $1.1 billion depth swap. So I think this is the right table to share it.
That is
Just
amazing. I'd love to know more about that. Thank you so much, and congratulations, and thank you for your leadership. And I also want to thank Stephen. I got on very well with his predecessor, and we always get worried when things change. You think, who's the next guy? And actually, Jonathan was fantastic, and I really enjoyed working with him, and he's a real believer. Stephen has been his whole life, and I love the fact that he's gone to jail for the cause that we're here to talk about, and I really look forward to working more. It's only been 9 days. I feel like I know you already, but your Prime Minister has been superb. I had the pleasure of meeting him. He clearly understands these issues. He knows these issues. He's committed, and the announcement that he made this week of £9 million for ORRAA is just really fantastic. So thank you for that. And John, you mentioned thank you for this as well, you mentioned the Blue Planet Fund, which has already been described, but it's a very exciting fund. We're still figuring out how best to spend it. It's a big fund, it's £500 million, and we're beginning now to edge some of that out the door, and we're proud to put 2 million of that to ORRAA this year, trying to get other donors to do something similar, and I'm pleased that we're able to say that £200,000 of that of that funding is going to support the next Ocean Resilience Innovation Challenge Fund, which is really important. And they're not here today, Swiss Re, but I'm going to make an announcement for them because they've been really important players. They are not able to be here, but they have asked me to announce that they will also be supporting this challenge with $400,000, creating another round of opportunities for financial innovation that can build coastal resilience across the globe. So thank you very much to Swiss Re for that. It is hugely important and massively appreciated. Clearly, the money matters, all this stuff matters, everything you've heard today matters, but we're going to have to find a way of changing the incentives as well. And I think the discussion that happened at the G7 around reforming those marine or fishing subsidies is really, really important. But we need to go from talk to action. We need to find a way collectively to identify those perverse incentives and then to shift them. And if we were to do that, the financial implications would dwarf whatever the philanthropic or public sector can provide. So we've really got to deal with those incentives. And one of the most exciting things I think that's come out of COP so far is a commitment by the multilateral development banks, including the World Bank, to not just reconcile their portfolios with Paris, which some had already committed to do, but to reconcile their portfolios with nature as well. And obviously that's land and sea, that's nature in its entirety. And that will, I think, that will have the impact, have the effect of shifting the market. Not completely, not far enough, but it will shift the market. If we can deal with those incentives as well, then we will complete the job, I think. Right, the second session focuses on how we can identify and overcome whatever barriers remain, and how we can rapidly scale up investment in ocean-based solutions. We've got some great people we're going to hear from. So I'm going to hand over, first of all, to Minister Shauna of the Maldives. Is that the right order, I think? I'm going to ask, after Minister Shauna, Albert Magalan, head of the Climate Change Office in the Department of Environment and Natural Resources in the Philippines, and then Lydia Abiba, advisor to the Minister of the Sea, Inland Waters and Fisheries in Mozambique. So Minister Shauna, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and very good morning. Okay, can you hear me? Yeah. Hi, good morning. It's really an honor to be here. I'm from the Maldives, and I think most of you are from the converted. I don't need to explain to you how vulnerable the Maldives is to climate change. We are about 1,200 islands, and about 187 islands are inhabited. About 150 islands are for tourism. We are a very large ocean state. Just 1% of our country is land and 99% is about ocean. Our coral reefs are basically our lifeline and the only resource that we have, which we depend on for food, for survival, and for income as well. And with climate change, it threatens the life of these coral reefs. What we have seen, even in my lifetime, even in the past decade, we don't see the healthy coral reefs that we used to see just 10 years ago. I'm a scuba diver, I snorkel frequently, and we just don't see it anymore. We are working to protect at least 20% of our ocean by 2030. We have already protected 13% of our coral reefs. And as a government, we are doing what we can to protect these. We are phasing out single-use plastics, and we are on track to do it. And I thank Karen, who is here, for introducing us to Blue Prosperity Coalition, who is supporting us to basically give us the science to drive data-backed policy decision making. And I'll explain to you a challenge that we face. Since 2015, the Paris Agreement, we have received just one project from the GCF for adaptation. And even that has not been realized. That was approved just 3 months ago, after 3 years of it being submitted. The first project was submitted in 2008 and approved in 2015. So what I'm trying to say here is that countries like the Maldives in the front line, we are not receiving the funds that's been even pledged, that's been given to either multilateral funds or other fund organizations. My tourism minister is very nervous when I talk about climate change, because one of the problems is they are facing is the resorts are having to pay more for insurance. And countries like ours, we haven't had access to these things that's been done. And I think it's very critical for us to continue to be in the front line of the climate debate, as well as develop as a country with the kind of things that we have other development priorities. And these are the challenges that we are facing. And I think it's very urgent to understand how critical to keep 1.5 alive is. Because really, the difference between 1.5 and 2 degrees is really a death sentence for us. And we've had about 4 weeks of bad weather in the Maldives, or just even when I'm speaking here right now, we have had multiple alerts, weather alerts that's been issued, and it costs lives, it costs us money, and all these things. So I'll leave you with one more note. We have the world's most sustainable fisheries industry as well. We catch one by one, and yet our fish are also taxed in other countries. And these are the kind of things I think we need to discuss and come to an agreement and really find a way to help us for the progressive policies that we are taking already. Thank you.
Okay, pleasant morning to everyone. So the Philippines is so pleased to be invited in this roundtable discussion. So I'll be brief in my response to how to overcome the question on how to overcome and accelerate barriers and to accelerate investment in ocean-based solutions. So straightforwardly, what the Philippines is working right now is to work on readiness aspects of making the communities, especially the fishing communities, ready for investment that would come, especially on marine and coastal resources management. So the barrier actually is on allocating adequate funds to local government units and local communities for the implementation of the integrated coastal resource management. First is, in preparation for this, local government units and local communities, with the help of civil society organizations are working on funding support guidelines. So we're starting with guidelines for establishment of coastal resource management, especially looking at an office for these communities, and also additional funding sources for local government units, particularly for community fishery resources management. Second, the Philippines is also building the data on cost-benefit analysis. So we really need to have the data, the baselines, and all information to support investments through the cost-benefit analysis, and updating the budget priorities framework to include fisheries and support to coastal, ocean, and marine conservation. In addition to that, we're also looking at how to establish a policy and governance structure that will also help in the advocacy for the development of relevant policies, including solutions and interventions which would be helpful from the local government units and the resource management. And of course, not only that, but also sustainable financing for coastal resources, very important of all. And then lastly, there's also the initiative to develop initial project pipeline potentially eligible projects for financing. So far, in a nutshell, those are the initiatives that are being undertaken by the Philippines, particularly focused on communities. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Good morning.
Thank you so much. So we're going to go to Lydia Abiba, who I mentioned earlier, and then we're going to come after that. Before I hand over, we're going to go to Barbados, where we're going to hear from Minister Kadi.
Obrigada. Ilustres, vou falar em português. Permitam-nos que comecemos por felicitar o Reino Unido e a ORRAA pela utilização deste importante evento sobre Finanças Jesus. É para nós uma grande honra poder partilhar os nossos pontos de vista sobre o assunto. Como o mundo tem vindo a acompanhar, os moçambicanos estão a testemunhar da pior forma os impactos das mudanças climáticas, apesar da nação ser uma das menos que contribui para o clima. A vulnerabilidade do país a estas ameaças é exacerbada pelas limitações financeiras, tanto do governo como do setor privado. Na implementação de estratégias de resposta aos desafios, Moçambique tem estado a realizar ações que vão desde o aprimoramento do quadro legal e institucional, bem como a diversificação dos mecanismos de financiamento ao clima. No que respeita aos oceanos, a título de exemplo, aprovou a política do mar e está a desenvolver o plano de ordenamento do espaço marítimo, e está empenhado na proteção de restauração e do mangal e a estabelecer áreas de conservação marinha para que até 2030 alcance 30% da zona econômica exclusiva. Distintos presentes. Moçambique colocou a sua... Posso ter isso? Moçambique colocou a sua ambição nas ações a desenvolver de respostas aos efeitos de mudanças climáticas, incluindo as constantes contribuições nacionalmente determinadas. Contudo, encontra-se financeiramente limitado para as desenvolver e, em particular, auxiliar as comunidades pesqueiras a se adaptar às mudanças climáticas. Esta limitante tem lugar primeiro pela inexistência ao nível nacional de produtos financeiros específicos para os assuntos do mar, adaptação e resiliência, e segundo, porque o principal mecanismo de financiamento climático das Nações Unidas destina-se maioritariamente aos projetos regionais e multicontinentais, para além dos processos de mobilização de financiamentos disponíveis serem longos e pouco eficientes. Ademais, os fundos disponibilizados por essa via são, na sua maioria, na forma de empréstimos, o que potencia o endividamento do país. Por tudo isto, Moçambique considera prioritário, primeiro, o estabelecimento de um sistema de financiamento mais arrojado e eficaz, particularmente para os países em desenvolvimento. O apoio aos programas de microfinança para os setores da economia azul, principalmente pesca e aquacultura. O apoio aos programas de microfinanças, a definição de metas mínimas concretas de financiamento para adaptação aos países em vias de desenvolvimento, o aumento de financiamento em forma de donativos de projetos do âmbito nacional, atribuir 100 milhões de dólares para financiamento climático, preferencialmente ao setor público, e adicionar a cota ao montante destinado ao setor privado. O estabelecimento destas diretivas internacionais para um esquema de títulos azuis como solução financeira aumenta a resiliência costeira e dos oceanos. O estabelecimento de diretivas internacionais para esquemas de investimento baseados na natureza em responsabilidade social corporativa através de multinacionais do setor dos recursos minerais e petróleo e gás. Vou pedir, antes de passar a palavra ao senhor Goldsmith, que o Tiago resuma o que eu acabo de dizer.
Okay, I'm just going to, I was asked that I could do a sum up very briefly. As a foundation that works for ocean conservation in Portuguese-speaking countries, I'll do so very synthetically. So first of all, Mozambique congratulates the UK and ORRAA for such an initiative. Mozambique is the clear example of a country that contributes so less for climate change, but that suffers so much for the negative impacts of climate change. Mozambique is working very hard on improving the institutional and legal framework. The examples are maritime special planning that is undergoing, the adoption of an ocean policy, the restoration of mangrove areas, and the commitment to the 30 by 30 for marine protected areas. Mozambique so has a high ambition in fighting climate change, but is severely limited in financial terms. And so it complains that there are no enough financial products for ocean economy. It's very important to mobilize more financing, and therefore the priorities are an international funding system that can be more ambitious and efficient, which I think is the same that other countries have spoken, support for microfinance programs for the sectors of the blue economy, including fisheries and aquaculture of small scale, and also special targets for finance for adaptation in the next years. Finally, as well, it's very important that there will be international directives for schemes that will develop blue bonds, such as the ones that were mentioned here by the Asian Development Bank, for instance, and also international directives for investments based on nature-based solutions, which will, in a way, engage the corporate and social responsibility of the multinationals that work in the mining, oil, and gas sectors. Thank you very much.
Thank you. First, my name is Marcia Cattle. I am the Minister of Economic Affairs and Investment in Barbados. I start with that introduction to give you a sense of where, how we consider the relationship between development and climate. Resilience is the development model for Barbados and arguably for all of the islands in the region. It's for that reason that we established a program called Roofs to Reefs. The reason we established Roofs to Reefs as our overall resilience investment prospectus is that what we were finding was that there were all of these small projects that had an environmental target but very little impact and no scale. And so we put together all of our projects into the Roofs to Reefs program to show as well the relationship between what happens in the terrestrial environment and what happens in the ocean. Because we know that we're talking about the stability of homes from hurricanes. We know we're talking about the runoff of nitrates into the marine environment. We know that we're talking about coastal preservation. And we know that as an economy, 40% of whose GDP comes from tourism, that we're also talking about resilient investment. That's the reason we put Roofs to Reefs together. We're talking about $2.5 billion in investment. And so that's why Barbados' head of delegation is a finance minister, because this has to be a finance conversation. But I was encouraged by Gustavo when he spoke to say a little bit about what we're doing. One is that we are just about finalizing a debt for nature swap. And that is where we're looking at $100 million. And 12% of that will be going to the Nature Conservancy to help manage 30% of our marine environment as a marine managed area. And again, what was said by Peter about making this relevant to people's lives is extremely important. I eat only fish. I don't eat meat or other things. I go to the market every week. And when you do that, you understand that you're talking about people's livelihoods. And the final thing I will say, I think that throughout COP, what we have to be talking about, what we have to not lose sight of, is the idea of just transition. When we're talking about being able to manage marine areas in a way that is sustainable, we have to manage that alongside people's lives to make sure people's lives and livelihoods are also sustainable. And so making sure we never lose sight of the fact that people use this industry and this marine environment to survive and to earn their living, and to talk about how they can exist in harmony with their environment. So I wanted to be able to say a little bit about what we're doing in Barbados, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy that you chipped in, because that is very inspiring, and a 30% plan for Barbados is an inspiration and something I hope every country will do. And the point you make about this, the critical importance of not treating people and nature as somehow they're separate. You protect nature at the expense of people. If that's the model that we pursue, it's the wrong model. The job has got to be, our challenge at every single level of society is reconciling people with nature, our economies with nature, so that we can live and our future generations can as well. So thank you so much for that. And I also wanted to acknowledge that you made a point about the Maldives tuna being taxed. And I'm afraid to admit that they're also taxed by the UK. And this is something which I'm really determined that will change, because trade policy has to be a force for good. And the Maldives' approach to fishing for tuna is the best in the world. I don't think that anything comes close. And I really would love that to be reflected properly in our own trading relationship. And it's a microcosm, I think, of something which needs a principle that should apply to trade globally. So thank you for reminding me. We will, I'm already doing what I can on this, but we will continue that discussion. And thank you for keeping up the pressure. All right, so look, we're so bad. I'm a hopeless chair. We're so out of time. I was meant to do a final speech at the end. I'm not going to do that, so because it's going to take too long. Ulrich will do that. She's going to say some concluding remarks. I'll come to her in a second, and she will wrap up. So I'm going to take this opportunity to thank everyone before handing over to, we're going to go Marcus. Marcus, if you could then hand on to Pierre Rousseau from BNP. Pierre, if you could hand over to Whitney Johnston from Salesforce. And Whitney, could you hand over to Stephen Van Weeb from Palladium? And we're going to hear from the four of them, and then we're going to hand back to Ulrike.
Thank you very much, Lord Goldsmith. Thank you very much, Ulrike. And thank you very much, Karen, Chip, and Ned. It's really a pleasure being here for this lively call for action. My name is Markus Muller, and I'm the Global Head of the Chief Investment Office of Deutsche Bank International Private Bank. My team looks after about 300 billion in client investments, and it looks also after our private bank's ESG and sustainability strategy. So my job is to think every day about how to mobilize finance in support of oceans resilience and other environmental causes, while also working to achieve the best possible return for our clients. And I truly believe that we can harness the power of private capital and private enterprises to solve challenges of this scale if we work together with a necessary focus and urgency. The barriers in our way are ones that affect the whole industry. We need to be more consistent in the way how we use data and metrics. We need to agree how to use economics and how to value natural capital and its economic system, understanding its intrinsic value. And we need to work with governments to align taxes, subsidies, and economic incentives. These are barriers that no single organization can overcome alone. So it's great to be here in Glasgow, meeting the whole ORRAA family in person. Thank you very much. For Ocean Action Day, I also want to assure you that Deutsche Bank is taking concrete actions in present designed to have a positive long-term impact on key ocean challenges. As a founding member of the Net Zero Banking Alliance, we are committed to supporting the transition to a low-carbon economy. We have also made a special commitment to the supporting the oceans and building a sustainable blue economy. So today, I am delighted to announce that we are launching a philanthropy fund dedicated to ocean conservation and coastal resilience. Over the coming years, this fund will be used to support a variety of initiatives selected in consultations with our partners in ORRAA. And the first initiative we intend to support will be the Future Climate Coral Bank. This is a unique project in the Maldives, designed to identify coral species that are resilient to climate change and conserve them in a living gene bank. It will help one of the most climate vulnerable countries to monitor and repair its reefs, maintain its fishing and tourism industry, and protect itself from the growing threat of storm surges. Ultimately, it will help scientists to heal and strengthen coral reefs around the world. Over the next 5 years, the project will need about $5 million to have the best chance of achieving all its key goals. But I'm proud to say that we have many clients who are deeply concerned and passionate about ocean conservation. And to start the ball rolling, Deutsche Bank, International Private Bank, is making its own donation of $300,000 to the Philanthropy Fund so that the phase 1 of the project is fully resourced. Of course, this is one vast positive step of many that will be required in the coming years. We just need to ensure that the oceans is recognized for the value of the ecosystem services it provides, having been undervalued and mistreated for so long. I look forward working with you all and to taking the next positive steps in our joint initiatives. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So we've got Pierre, Whitney, and Stephen. I have to say we're going to be evicted unless we are not keeping to time. We're already over, and that's my fault. But if we could limit talk,
I'm here.
Thank you so much. Could we limit it to the core argument?
I will make it very fast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. BNP Paribas consider the ocean economy not just to finance a sector, but it's the future of the economy and the complementary of the existing economy, where we have to find a balance between economy and conservation, integrating climate, biodiversity, and community life of the billions of people living around. Conventional finance is starting to do a lot of things. We commit in Oslo $1 billion for financing shipping transition, and we are well engaged on that. We are financing the wind farm, the infrastructure. We are issuing blue bonds, the one with Bank of China. We are creating a blue ETF fund. Conventional finance is there and will progress, but that will not solve the problem. We need to create and disrupt finance. And for that, that's why we launch projects like, and we work on projects like the Coral Fund of Coral Reef. And I would like, Minister, to thank you, like Canada, for the contribution that UK has done to that fund and to the grant window. But that's not enough. I need also, if I thank you, I need also your help here, because you talk about barriers. Developing blended finance doesn't work. It's not going fast enough because there are too many constraints. The transaction cost is too high. We need politicians to help regulators to set up special purpose vehicle or personal platform in order to accelerate that. And that will be my main demand, because here we have to explain what are the barriers. Today, blended finance is not going fast enough if we want to finance all the million. So consequences, developing coalition like we do on the coral reef, and in the ocean there will be an additional coalition that we need to take, is to work closely with other finance people like the insurance company, because mixing financing and insurance will be the way to attract investor in something which is still seen as an unsecure area. No investors are very active in the ocean today. We have to realize the capital market is empty. So we need to accelerate and create new products. So coalition is important. We are linking also foundation and grants. So we used to do that in BNP for a long time to the economical. So it's not separated to what we are doing on economical. And finally, partnering, to be part of partners is very important. We are already part of several. And I'm very pleased to announce that we are about to finalize the joining ORRAA as an additional member. Thank you.
Hello, I am Dr. Whitney Johnston from Salesforce. Thank you so much for having me today. And thank you for your commitments. at Salesforce, we recognize there is a climate emergency, and the first thing that we need to do, of course, is reduce emissions. So we have made numerous commitments over the past several years to that effect. As part of the journey in reducing emissions, carbon emissions, we are also investing in nature-based solutions through the purchase of carbon credits. So as Director of Ocean Sustainability, I am launching a blue carbon program at Salesforce, which will be represented by a commitment of purchasing 1 million tons of high-quality blue carbon credits over the next 4 years. In order to enable this and ensure that we have optimal outcomes for people, planet, and climate, speaking to, I think everyone at this table has already enumerated how that works with coastal ecosystems, of course. In order to deliver that, we need to do that together. And so we are also forming a Blue Carbon Buyers Alliance so that we can work to increase the supply of these high-quality blue carbon credits, and so that buyers can act responsibly and in an informed manner together. And finally, we have also committed, Salesforce has committed to $100 million for ecosystem restoration and climate justice. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Stephen van Wede with Palladium. Very proud and grateful to be here today on this important day. Palladium is focused on the development and delivery of impact around the world, and as such we feel very aligned with ORRAA, and therefore we're very proud to be able to announce today that we're joining ORRAA as full members of the Alliance. We are working with ORRAA in the development of, and we're spending a lot of time thinking about the design of an architecture for global ocean finance. And there will be many, I think, interesting announcements in that vein in months and quarters to come. But for now, I'm hoping that many of you here and many others will join us on that exciting journey, and that you will join us in Back Blue. Thank you.
Thank you. So one last very short announcement on our side. We wanted to take advantage of today to announce the first, the creation of the AXA XL Coastal Risk Index, which will be a tool enabling to assess much of what has been talked about and discussed today, which is the impact of global coastal flooding and the protective benefits of coastal ecosystems, and integrating them into insurance models. So we believe that this will be a really groundbreaking tool for investors, for insurers, but also for governments to assess the risks that their communities are exposed to today, in 2030, but also in 2050. So that's it on my side. So thank you for letting me close this amazing session, very passionate. I think the fact that we run completely out of time is also credit to your passion, to your commitment, and to how important this topic is, and not at all to our defaults in time management. Thank you so much to all for being here. It was a great pleasure meeting all of you. Thank you.